You're reading too much. You're too smart. Hey, welcome to Blonde and Beyond. My name's Eliza David Ovid. I thank you so much for joining us again. Today we're going to be talking about Chanuka. I have with me here my gorgeous and lovely, brilliant co-host, Lee First, who will say a few words about herself, and then we'll talk about me. Okay, your turn.
Because it's December, we speak about Hanukkah now. And Hanukkah always comes out in December. But first, let me tell you who I am. My name is Judge Lee B. First. I was the former supervising judge at the Workers' Compensation Board for the entire state of New York. I also was the president of the Metropolitan Women's Bar Association. I have written a book about my life. Just a moment, I want to show it to...
It's falling off the shelves.
It's falling off the shelves. Justice is Blonde, with a subtitle, The Unorthodox Story of an Orthodox Woman. It's how you can be orthodox today and still have fun and even be a judge.
And even be blonde. And that's why we call the show Blonde and Beyond, because the judge and I both grew up in stereotypes. Oh, you're blonde, you can't be religious. Oh, you're blonde, you can't be smart. So we're here to show you that you could be blonde, and you could be smart, and you could be blonde, and you could be an Orthodox Jewish woman, and we'll go beyond that.
And here is the gift that Eliza, my co-host, has just given me, Legally Blonde, which is very topical, very topical. Anyway, whether we're legally or not, we will not discuss today. Whether
I
we're
have the right to remain silent, right?
That's right, that's right.
So, we're going to talk about Hanukkah. Hanukkah is?
The Feast of Lights. The story of Hanukkah is well known by most people.
I don't know. Tell me all about it.
Tell you
I really know. But I'm blonde.
Well, it's a very long story, and I don't want to take the entire time. If
right,
we should really go into the history, well, I shall go backwards. Okay, in 165 BCE,
we say, I just want to point it out that Jews say BCE, not before Christ BC. We say BCE, before Common Era.
Before the Common Era, because Jewish people many years ago, even today, they're very Orthodox, do not say the word Christ. So when I come from Borough Park, you know, which is like very religious community, that's where I was living, people say, where do you come from? I say, I come from Borough Park, BC. They say, BC? Yes, before Hasidim.
Before Hasidim.
So we can say before Hasidim. They have a street on Borough Park, you know, the main street is 13th Avenue. You know what they call it? Rue de la Paix. You know, the Rue de la Paix, Rue de la Paix, that's where I come from.
Well, maybe we should start by telling the story of Hanukkah. People celebrate Hanukkah.
I am telling them.
Oh, you are?
Yes, I am.
Listen.
Because we are going to make it, we cannot make it entirely long. The Greeks were at one time prior to 165, were living in, took over Jerusalem. They Hellenized Jerusalem. And these Jewish people, like today we have the Chilonim in Israel, they don't want to be religious. So you would not believe how much the Jewish nation idolized the Greeks and all their culture.
Right.
Around just before 165 BCE, maybe 50 years before. And they called themselves, the Jews called themselves the Hellenists. The Hellenists, why? What do you want? They took, I'm sure you know that, the temple, a holy of holy temple, and they made it into a gymnasium. and they took out the vessels. They hired
holy
a
vessels.
priest. All the vessels they sold and took the money and gave it to Antiochus, the
Which
king,
was the king of...
the king of Syria, the king of Syria. Because the Hellenists, you won't believe this, the Jewish people, the Hellenists, called in Antiochus to help them against the Orthodox Jews. So he came to help them.
And the intention of the Hellenists at the time was they truly believed that they were bringing light into the world. And in many cases, because they were so advanced in the arts and in sciences and in poetry
Mostly
and
gymnasium,
history,
mostly the body.
they were advanced in many ways. And for the rest of the world, in many ways, they were bringing light to the world. But then they came to a culture, a Jewish culture, who had a life of its own. Not only a life of its own, but a light of its own, a light that preceded Hellenism by thousands
Well,
of
they
years.
couldn't exist at the same time, Elisa.
But they did exist at the same
No,
time.
because
That's
the
story of
Hellenists,
Chanuka.
the Hellenists went into the temple, made it into a gymnasium, and every Jew they preferred had to do naked exercise. Therefore, when they were circumcised, they had many operations to put back whatever they had to do in order that they should not be circumcised.
But
That's the basis of our religion.
Right, but the Jews were, there was many Jews who were the heroes of that time that were confronting them and fighting against them.
Well, that's how Hanukkah happened. But in the
Right.
beginning, what they did, they took out, you know, where the sacrifices are made in the temple? And they put the picture of Zeus, Z-E-U-S. And that was the god put into our holy temple. Then they made a very big dinner every night. Swine, pigs. The Jews, the Hellenists said, we have to eat swine, pigs, because
Which was
we
such
are
a challenge for the Jews.
right
because-
into the temple.
Right.
And then some of the Jews didn't agree. So they called in this Antiochus and they said, help us, help us. The Jews did it.
But there was plenty who resisted. You know, I'm going to take issue
Now
with
we
that.
are going to speak about Hanukkah. There was Mattathias, the Maccabees, you know. There were
Right.
certain groups. They said, what's going on here? Let us fight Antiochus. We cannot have everything destroyed.
But
That's
it's
how it
interesting
happened.
that the animal that they used in order to persuade Jews or to force them to convert and to change to their religion and to become the Greek religion,
Hellenists.
the Hellenists, was they forced them to eat pig. And it's funny because the pig is always the example of the non-kosher animal that people should not eat. But there's plenty of other animals that are not kosher. Why the pig is a specific issue in Judaism? Because the two states that make an animal not kosher, or that make them kosher, the two things that make an animal kosher is that they chew their own cud and that they have split hooves. Now the pig has one of those. It has split hooves, but it doesn't chew its own cud. So to the outside world, this pig comes along showing its two hooves and shows, look, I'm kosher animal. And that's what the Hellenists wanted the Jews to do. They wanted them, just eat the pig now and show it to everybody that you're really doing what we want. And at home you could go do and be kosher. So they wanted them really to be the same thing as a pig was, to degrade themselves to the state of a pig. Here, look, I'm doing one thing, but on the inside I'm another thing. And it was to the contrary, and it was because of that specific point that many of the Jews and the heroes at that time didn't do that particular thing, and they didn't eat the pig, and they chose death over that, because they were not going to be like a chazer, like a pig, showing themselves to be one thing, and really in life being another thing. They set themselves as examples, as heroes, as martyrs for the Jews of then and the Jews of now.
Imagine, I read somewhere, the king, I forgot his name, Joram was a king of the Jewish nation. He stenciled the name of God on his body part.
And it had some Kabbalistic
Kabbalistic, I mean, they just
combinations
wanted to
you could-
show.
Right.
So there were the Maccabees, right? And there was this man, Mattathias, he had 5 sons. And they decided that they're going to fight. So they divided themselves into 4 different groups. It was like the greatest miracle that they should. And then they won against Antiochus.
Right,
They
on several
won.
occasions.
And then they went back to the Beis HaMikdash, which is our temple. And what they saw there, they didn't have any vessels, because the priest was selling them to give the money to Antiochus.
Right, they sold all the
They
vessels.
couldn't believe it. Finally, they said, they found a little bottle of oil, and they said, let's rededicate this and purify it and light the menorah as you have here. But we can only have enough oil for one day. That's all we have. So they lit it, and of course everybody knows the miracle of Hanukkah is that it burned for 8 days. That little oil burned for 8
But the
days.
miracles even started before then, because you had this small army, a small Jewish army of Yehuda and the Maccabees, and whatever they had. If they had 10,000, then the Greeks had 200,000. They were outnumbered by leaps and bounds. And the fact that they won on a consistent basis against these people is not only a lesson of then, but it's a lesson of today too, because you have a country, a small tiny country like Israel, surrounded by an enormous amount of enemies, and that we triumph in all these wars and all these
Well, I'll tell you,
hostilities against Israel is
that was a
showing
miracle.
this is a miraculous thing. This is not a country sustaining itself on just weapons and arms. It can't be.
It can't
But
be.
the challenge of Jews today is to, just as the Maccabees, before every war they fasted and they prayed to Hashem, and they realized that's where their success come from, so too today, the Jews in Israel, and I'm not one to speak because I sit safely here in America, and there's Israelis and people dying in Israel, but the fact is that we always have to remember as Jews, whether we're here or there or anywhere, is that God is our salvation, not the sword and not our bombs and not anything else, but God himself is the one who redeems Jews and helps them and saves them.
But even the Christians today, after what happened in the World Trade Center, they also are returning to the churches because they say that God has a hand. It is a miracle. So what happened in the 6-Day War? So what happened? America went over to Golda Meir and said, listen, in 6 days you win a war against all these Arabs. How did you do that? It takes us years to win a war in America. How do you do it? So Golda Meir said it's very simple. In the front row, I put all the lawyers. The second row, I put all the accountants. And the third row, I put all the doctors. And boy, can they charge.
It's very cute.
So that's what we have to do. It's really a miracle.
But really, the triumph of the Jews throughout history has been a tremendous miracle. You can't attribute any of our successes to just secular phenomena. I can't even think of the word I'm trying to say. It's not just practical human actions that have made the course of our destiny. It's Hashem's guidance and Hashem's implicit and explicit involvement in our lives.
You know, I didn't mention when the Hellenists, not only did they sell all the vessels, they burned the Torah. Not only did you have to eat swine, but they took our holy book. That's the Jewish people. Hellenists are the Jewish people who have accepted a Greek culture.
You know, I heard a beautiful story, throughout history, that when people have burnt the Torah, the physical body of the Torah, just as when Moses threw down the tablets, and the tablets themselves, the concrete part broke, all the letters flew up back to Hashem, just like the body of a person remains here on earth, but the soul goes back to its source.
Because the Torah has a soul.
The Torah is the soul
The
of the
letters
Jewish
are
people.
holy. That's why when they made the Hebrew language, the Hebrew is Lashon Kodesh. Every letter has a mystical significance. It has a numerical value. Hebrew is not just a language, Hebrew is not like in English. For example, in English say, I love you. I love you. I love chicken. I love everything. I love dancing. I love. That means whatever is good for me, I love.
It's a narcissistic society.
It's life, it's everywhere. But in Hebrew, how do you say I love? You say, oh, Hev, Aleph, I. Hev means to give in the old Hebrew language, Hev. It's only when I give of myself to another person, I truly love them. That's only one
I heard
word.
something beautiful. Even though it's off the subject, it's so beautiful that the word l'chaim, when we say l'chaim, it's in the plural. We don't say l'chai, to life.
Right.
We say l'chaim in the plural. Why? Because life can only be fully fulfilled and enjoyed is when it's in the plural among other people. But getting back to Chanuka, talking about the lights, it's interesting because in Judaism, we're a very private religion. We don't go out missionizing. We don't say, come everybody become Jewish. In fact, if somebody wants to be Jewish, we put them off for a year, make them study. We make them,
You put them off, right? You say you don't want to be
We're
a Jew.
We're very private people. We respect everybody to be their own thing, and we're our own thing. But when it comes to Hanukkah, all of a sudden, we become show-offs. We take the menorah, we put it in the window for everyone to see. Why?
Why?
Because it's in complete contrast to expose what they tried to do to us. They tried in public to make us give up our religion, to bow down to idols, to eat chazer, to show everyone, look, we took the people of the Bible and we turned them into Hellenists. And we're saying, no, here we have our menorah for a light unto all the nations and unto all the world, that we triumphed and we survived and we're still Jews.
When you say we were light unto all the nations, because the way we live, we brought the Torah, we brought the law to the nations. When we say we are a chosen nation, it's not to show
God,
off.
pick on somebody
Pick on
else.
somebody else, but it's not to show off. They say, who made you chosen? We don't mean that. We mean we are a light unto all nations. We've been chosen to teach people how to lead a life. Prior thereto, people lived like animals in the Middle Ages, before Noah's flood. You know that people had sex with animals, people acted like animals, and it was the most horrible period. So God said, I'm going to destroy the world. I'm going to make a flood, right?
Right.
Because people were so low. Now what happened? Of course, Noah, he survived.
They said even the animals became corrupted.
Even the animal
Even the
was
animals.
horrible.
That's why everything was destroyed.
Now, prior to the flood, man was only to eat vegetarian food. They didn't eat animals. After the flood, God said to man, now you will eat animals. What do you mean? We should eat, meat, basar? Yes. To show that you are above the animal. So we had Rav Kook, he was the chief rabbi,
Right,
Israel.
Israel.
He was a vegetarian. Every Shabbos, he ate a little piece of meat because he wanted to keep, because he wanted to show that our soul, we're not on the level of an animal. That can't be my husband, my wife, they still
You
do
are
that.
what you eat.
You are what you eat. But, they still do that in certain parts of the world.
Back to Chanuka, there is a vikuach, which means a debate between the house of Hillel and the house of Shammai, which are two Talmudic scholars. And what was the debate? If the oil lasted for 8 days, then the light should be diminished. We should start with 8 lights, and every night make 1 light less. That by the last night we should only have 1 light standing, because that's already the end. That was the house of Shammai. Beit Hillel says, no, the opposite. We have to start from 1 and go all the way to 8. And that in the end we should have all of them lit. Who do we go by? In the end we always go by Hillel. And the reason is, and especially in this case, is that Judaism is a religion that has faced so many challenges, and Jews have faced hardship and persecution, and we never go down, and we never downgrade, and we never become diminished. If anything, our light increases, our belief in Hashem increases, our practical application of the Torah increases, that in the end we are a light that sustains not only our own people, but the entire nation. And that's why the whole world looks at Israel with a critical eye, because they are the chosen people. They receive for that little country more criticism than any country in the world, because we are supposed to be the light among the nations, the light that stands in the window, and everyone should see the miracle of Hanukkah.
That's very nice, Elisa. This guy Hillel, he was a very liberal guy. Whatever you asked him, he's one of the big lights. So we asked him, some man came to him, teach me the whole Torah on 1 foot. You remember?
Right.
He said, love your neighbor as yourself. In 1 word, he taught the whole Torah. He was a great guy. But you see, in Israel today, what you're saying, we should be a light unto all nations. The young people today in Israel, they don't really know their roots. So they say Israel is a country like every other country. Israel, let's just go dancing, have this go there, this and that, It's like the most unbelievable thing, because they don't realize Israel is a special country.
It's funny, I just interviewed Mortimer Zuckerman of for Lifestyles magazine. Mortimer Zuckerman is the editor-in-chief of U.S. News and World Report. He's also the president of Conference of Presidents. And in his acceptance speech, he said, not only is it important that you let my people go, but also that you let my people know. Because there is such a poor sense of history and of understanding. People put the past so much behind them that they forget the past altogether. They don't know what their history is, what their roots are. And it's very important in today's day and age, as Holocaust survivors are dying, that we let our children know what our lives and our history is all about. The Arabs are every single day teaching their children and ingraining them and creating history. We have to teach them what history is.
We went to Israel this past summer because our children live in Israel. And a man came, the head of education, to lecture to us and show us the book that the Israelis are using in their school system, Israeli schools, because we have such a thing as Orthodox schools and regular schools. They don't teach about the Holocaust, one word, one word. They don't teach them anything about Jewish history, they leave it out. We were so shocked. So right now there's a big debate in the Knesset, which is the government in Israel. They're going to change the books because Sharon said every Jewish child should know, believe it or not. The davening should know it,
Right.
doesn't have to do it, should know Jewish history. I'm shocked. Sharon is fabulous.
You know,
because
I'm sorry.
that's only because,
Yeah.
you see, our first leaders, Ben Gurion and all these other, from the old timers, they always knew their Jewish history. They didn't have to keep anything. They knew they were Jews.
But it's
Not
a different,
in the
listen, you're
schools,
in the
man.
MTV generation now. Every Israeli kid has the internet and MTV and the Reeboks running shoes. I mean, they don't really have that sense of history. Not only Israeli kids, every American Jew. I work at a major news organization and I interview interns for positions. Interns, Jewish kids who are studying journalism, and I say, who's the Prime Minister of Israel? They tell me Rabin. I'm sorry to tell you, unfortunately Rabin was shot 6
That's
years
what
ago.
they say?
It's heartbreaking for me.
But even in Israel, you would faint what they don't know.
But
they
you know,
know
it's
nothing.
upsetting because
What is Yom Kippur? They don't know it in Israel.
But this is the point of Hanukkah itself, is that we were fighting multiculturalism. Yes, you can have multiculturalism. You can be a pluralistic state. You can have Christians in Israel, and you can have Catholics, and you can have every religion. But you have to know who you are, too. Let them not supersede who you are.
But
Every other person has confidence in who they are.
once they're better
I see
Torah, they
you
want
have-
it destroyed who we are, destroy the
But
roots.
Jews have to be proud of who they are. You know, I see in Manhattan you have a homosexual parade and people are running with their banners and they're proud. And you have neo-Nazi parades, and I'm not making any equivalence between anything, but all I'm saying is that people are proud of who they are. And Jews have to wake up and stop being self-hating Jews. Because if you hate yourself, people are going to hate you too, and you
That's
have a lot
only-
to be proud of.
That is only because they're not taught, like you say in Arab school, they teach. Germany taught. In Israel, the secular Jew is afraid to learn too much about Jewish
It's a
history.
problem.
Jewish
It's a
history,
problem.
they cannot know that.
I believe in giving people choices, but let them have the knowledge
Now,
of the options.
my daughter married a Chabad man, and they had a little girl, and the little girl was like 5 years old. She came to visit me in Israel, and they never saw TV. I put on the television. There was a guy singing without a yarmulke, a rock star and everything. I said to her, Simabella, when you grow up, you won't marry a boy like that. He's not a good Jew. You know what she said? Like 4 or 5 years old, she said, he is a good Jew, like you and I. His parents forgot to teach him. Is that
Well,
sweet?
but that's the way it should
That's
be.
the way it should be. That's what we have to teach, but she recognized
You
that.
see, but
thing
that's
to
a
do.
problem in Judaism itself, or among Jews, is that people are very judgmental. And, you know, I always like to refer back to this, but Hitler did not discriminate between Jews, even if your ancestor was a Jew. So
Can
we
I-
among ourselves should not be discriminating if you're Reform or Conservative or whatever you are. You're
Let
a
us
Jew.
finish
And to
with
be
Hanukkah.
Okay, what about...
Hanukkah, you have to know one thing, that we have to be very, very happy. That's how we celebrate
Okay.
it. Number one, we play dreidel. It's like a spin the dreidel, has these sides with our children, you know, and they play for money, so they can win money and be happy. On the dreidel is written, you know, Nes Godol Hoya Shom. There was a big nest there, and each letter,
big
one you
miracle there,
win, one
right.
you win this and that. So, or we can play cards. We have to have a good time on Hanukkah, right?
And
so
eat a lot
that's
of
it.
latkes.
Now you eat latkes. What is latkes? A potato pancake. It's made in oil. But in Israel, they eat something else made in oil.
Anything that has to
and
do
no,
with
it's
the
like, you know, donuts in oil. Because oil, we have to remember.
You know
Now,
what's very
Jackie
interesting?
Mason, did
Go
you
ahead.
hear this? Jackie Mason
Anything
said,
Jackie Mason has to say, I listen to.
you see, that's what happens. Hanukkah comes out in December. right? But we go according to the Jewish calendar. Now, Christmas goes according to the American calendar. Christmas, December 24th, we know that, that's Christmas. Hanukkah can be early in Christmas, you know, or could be early December, late December. We don't know exactly when it falls out. We don't know exactly, and we have to buy a lot of presents on Hanukkah. So Jackie Mason said that's why Jewish women have to shop all year.
Just for Hanukkah?
No, because they
You
don't know when the
coming up?
holidays are, even the other holidays. How can it be bound to that, right? You
Right.
know? And also, you see, you heard the story about the little boy, the grandmother goes to the little boy and says, listen, it's Hanukkah, why don't you pray to God for presents? You know, we give a lot of presents on Hanukkah. So he said, dear God, give me a Nintendo, give me a bicycle. So his brother said, but listen, why are you screaming so loud? God can hear you no matter how you speak to him. The little boy said, yeah, but Grandma can't.
You know, talking about Hanukkah as being a holiday of lights and a triumph of light over darkness, it's very interesting, but every year, Hanukkah, the Shabbos of Hanukkah falls on the day when the days start getting longer. The days start getting longer, and there in point, it shows that it really is a holiday of light triumphing over darkness. Just as if you go to the parasha of that time, is the parasha, which is the biblical portion of Joseph who was imprisoned by Pharaoh in Pharaoh's dungeons.
Yes.
And it was on Hanukkah, and that parasha in Miketz, where he was liberated, all of a sudden, 12 years he's pining away, all of a sudden Hanukkah zoom, like it happened in 1 second, he's out. Because just when we think that we have no more hope, and that we're filled with despair, and that the darkest hour is here, we should always remember that the darkest hour is before the dawn, and the light always comes.
That's true. That's why your husband has to buy you gorgeous presents for Hanukkah, so the light comes, diamonds, you know, we
I
have
was
to buy
making such a
presents.
profound point, I was so
I
into
understand,
it.
I understand, you know. So
What is
speaking about we Jewish people have to still believe in God. We say Shema Yisrael every day, you know.
An
Shema Yisrael.
affirmation of belief in God.
Affirmation that there's one God. So the little boy, he heard, you know, the Lord our God is one. So the little boy said, oh really, when will he be two? So what I want to tell you, Antiochus was that bad king, you know, the one that
Right.
did all these bad things. He's the one who invented the gladiators, where everyone had to fight with animals, you know, that was for the entertainment of. So do I have time to tell the story?
Sure, yeah.
What happened is, this is a good story if you're a guest of honor at a dinner, which I was.
Okay.
So the Antiochus was there, and the gladiator was eating, you know, comes in there, and there comes the lion. The lion is eating up this poor Jewish man. Then comes another lion. The third Jewish man walks in, you know, he whispers to the lion. And the lion turns around. He just walks right out. So Antiochus said, listen, what did you say to this lion that he didn't eat you up? Tell me, and I'll let you go free. The Jewish man said, all I said was, if you're going to have your dinner, you'll have to stay for the speeches.
Anybody who's been to a tribute dinner is probably rolling over.
They loved it, but they all stayed for my speeches because I like to tell jokes.
So,
It was
you know,
humor.
when I think about Hanukkah in light of everything that's happening in the world today, and I have to say, but as a religious Jew, and as somebody who loves America profoundly, I'm the last person to admire a Taliban or a terrorist or anybody of that nature. But I can say that these people are ready to die for what they believe in. And I'm wondering how many people today are ready even to live for what they believe in. What are you ready to do for your religion, for your family, for, you know, tomorrow never comes. I mean, we saw people in the World Trade Center, God forbid we should never know of such things, but they didn't have their tomorrow or the chance to tell their mother or their sister or their wife that they love them, that they're sorry. You know, every day.
They say it's easier to die for a principle than to live for it.
I know,
That's
but
what
you
the
know
Arabs are
something?
doing.
If God wanted that, He would have just created the world with one big cemetery, and that's it. You have a bunch of dead people.
Well, the
You
Arabs are
people have
willing
so
to
much
die.
in them that they can contribute to their religions and to their community. And you know, what are you waiting for?
Did you ever hear of Jack Benny? He was a
Yeah.
big comedian, Jack Benny, because you were young. So they say a robber came to him, he put a gun to his head, and he said, your money or your life? So Jack Benny said, let me think of it then for a minute. Give me a chance.
Well, you know something, we live in a day and age where there's not too much time for that type of thinking. You know, I think that people...
I think our
gotta
time
wrap
is up. I hope you all learned something about Hanukkah.
Happy
It was at
Hanukkah.
165 BCE when this occurred, this great miracle of Hanukkah.
And the lessons haven't changed. You got to stand up for what you believe in.
Like
God bless you, God bless America, and thank you for tuning in to Blonde and Beyond.
Thank you.
No.
I think Alisa is brilliant.
Why, thank you. What motivated that?
Evidently.